About 12:35. Welcome everybody to attending the July Lunch, Learn, and Collaborate meeting. Want to appreciate everybody showing up. Got a fairly large gathering today. I'm sure everybody's curious about this migration process. Um, just a little bit about what's going to be happening. I want to talk a little bit about some of the questioning and giving a few answers to the more common question emails that we've been getting. We'll pause and do a Q&A where people can ask questions. And then Marcelina Nogales will be presenting her project, her part, where she's going to be talking about data management. All righty. Well, as always, I always like to start off by doing the stats. For our REDCap stats, which is our current REDCap system, we have approximately 632 active projects, of which 194 are in production, and the balance of 438 are in development. Quite a few projects. Almost equally as impressive, we have 647 active users. We have, of those, 526 are FSU institution users and 121 external to FSU users. And just like last month, we have 9 Mosio-enabled projects. Because we've actually been moving people and projects over to ITS REDCap, I thought it'd be pretty cool to start talking about the stats over there. So I ran some stats, and this is what I have thus far. We have approximately 128 active projects in ITS REDCap, of which 21 are in production and 174 in development. We have approximately 52 users, active users. 49 are FSU institution users and 3 external users, and no Mosio projects are being recorded as of yet. Got an announcement here. Just a reminder that if you would, please fill out your REDCap migration survey if you haven't done it about your projects. Here is the link here. We will also Alex will post the links to about a half a dozen survey links that would be helpful to you toward the end of this meeting today. And then I think I have a housekeeping note. If you would, please keep yourself on mute and raise your hand, or put your question in chat. And during the Q&A portions, there'll be one after I do my little presentation, and then another part after Marcelina does hers. We'll pause twice, and you guys can ask questions, and hopefully we can give you the answers that you want to hear. All right, so I'm going to start talking about the migration of projects. These are some of the questions that a lot of people have been asking, and so I'm hoping to put the concern to rest a bit. The deadline for completing the migration inquiry survey, we've suggested August 15th, which is just over 2 weeks from today. The deadline to complete your project migration, we're leaning toward the end of October, so I put actual date instead of leaving it loosely. So we're saying Monday, October 27th. We are giving the opportunity if people are out there, because there are some people that are a bit concerned about having to pause their projects. So we've created this exception survey that you would fill out. We ask certain questions in it related to your projects. And then the REDCap team, once it's submitted, the REDCap team and leadership will get together and address each request project by project and go from there. Another question that's very common coming up is, how long will the migration take? Well, it depends on the complexity of your project, meaning that if the project is without surveys, it could take as little as 1 day or even only a couple hours or less even. Um, if the project has surveys, IRBs, and Mosio, it will take potentially several days because you got to wait on IRB approval. We have to get the REDCap team to help with the Mosio enabling. And then there's some other to-dos that we'll talk about in the next bullet. And that is after the next bullet says, what do you need to do after the migration? Well, there's the IRB approval process on the surveys because we're moving it from one platform to another. The surveys, QR codes, and survey links will change, and you'll have to submit that to the IRB. If your project has external modules, EMs, those will have to be re-enabled by the REDCap team. Also, users will have to be re-added to your project. Any users that you had over in the Med REDCap, they will have to be re-added to the ITS REDCap. We would like to note that the users will need to log in to redcap.fsu.edu, which is the ITS REDCap, first before they can be added to the project. If they've already logged in, then in the past, they could just be added to the project with no problem. Also note that the usernames may change in the format because ITS REDCap is going to has a format of the your FSU ID at fsu.edu. We were trying to be proactive in the past, and on the Med REDCap, we had those. I started doing those about a year ago, creating the users that way, and we were able to grant those users over into the ITS REDCap. So when you log in, you should just be able to walk on in. Another point to point out is the need to request a new API token for each project. Unfortunately, the tokens will have to change too over in the ITS. So we've got this survey that you need to fill out. You've probably filled it out in the past for your API export or import APIs keys. The only thing I want to point out is there's a question in there that says, are you requesting a token for the ITS REDCap as part of the migration? If you put yes, you get a shorter list of questions to answer. If it's a no, i.e., if you build your project in ITS REDCap, you'll get the longer form where you have to answer additional questions and maybe upload a couple of documents. Also, there was a question about will the migration affect Mosio in a project or my project? And their answer is probably, most likely. REDCap company, I'm sorry, Mosio, the company, is not sure. They've never experienced this. But we do ask that you submit a support ticket, like we always have done to support you. And we will gladly walk you through getting your Mosio re-enabled in the ITS REDCap. One point, couple of people have asked, can they continue working in their Med REDCap while that same project is being migrated over to the ITS REDCap? You cannot. And for multiple reasons, we don't want double data entry in Med and ITS REDCap. Then things get you got to remove data over, and it's just complex. Once the project is over in the ITS REDCap, we will take the Med REDCap offline to assure that your clients or your participants don't do double data entry or enter in data in the wrong URL, I guess I should say. And that taking the Med REDCap offline will only happen once you've done all your testing and it's ready to be moved to production in the ITS REDCap. And that's about all I was going to talk about as far as the migration. At this point, if you would just raise your hand, and we will address that. Alex will
I already have two questions in chat.
Okay.
So the first one is, why is this migration necessary?
Um, so the short answer is ITS is trying to consolidate all REDCap across the FSU organization, and so there was one at psychology, and there's one over was the med REDCap, and so we just want to consolidate it over under one umbrella, and so that's why we're doing that.
Okay, thank you. And the second one is, will these slides be sent out or a list of steps to follow for migration?
So to that point, if you notice in this slide we're looking at, there is a document at this URL that will go into greater detail about the migration and questions about the migration. The slides, I believe, is something that we do post up on a website, but I speaking a little bit out of my wheelhouse. So if somebody else wants to,
Yeah, we'll also
Marceline,
send out the
or
slides.
what's that?
We'll also send out the slides to attendees.
Okay.
Um,
Okay, and we have a raised hand, so I'm going to allow the user to talk.
Okay, Kevin.
Okay.
Kevin, can you hear us? Okay.
So my first question, I just want to make sure I understood. So the links for our project will change, is that correct?
The link for your projects, you mean for your surveys?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and are people aware of like how much that impacts us?
Yes, sir. We are. We, the Red Cap team, is fully aware of that. I don't know if other of your colleagues, our colleagues in the Red Cap arena is aware of that. Um, it's just a necessity, but I get it.
Well,
Uh,
just to share from our standpoint as
yes, sir.
researchers, we have done a lot of community outreach. I mean, I'm talking
Yep.
hours and hours over years of getting our information into different clinics, to different stakeholders. And that's how we recruit and have people participate in our studies. And so to change these links is, disrupting years of research. So I just don't know that that was considered.
No, it is considered, sir. But what I would like to suggest, if you would, fill out that exception, um, because it sounds like to me that you got years and years of research that you're concerned about. So I would fill out the request for extension and put that in the fields that are available to express your concern, and that's all we can offer at the moment. It's we've just been told that this has to move. Med will be turning off the red cap service over there at some point. We don't know that time, but absolutely we get it. Um, and um,
And I guess from our standpoint, who made that decision? And it's always concerning when people make decisions without consulting stakeholders and
yes, sir.
understanding the impact. Because this has a huge impact on our research, and we just don't have the resources to deal with it. Um, who made that decision? Um,
Well, it was leadership, directors above me, and our red cap team.
okay.
Um,
Do they
you
have
know,
names?
I'd rather not give out a name. Um, that's why we're going to do the extension request. And if at some point, if that leadership wants to reach out to you, if you have filled out the request for extension, it's up to them. I can't speak for them, but I can just tell you the channels to get the information to them to express your concern. And as soon as you submit that extension, you continue working in the Med Red Cap until we're able to reach out to you and help you get through your project.
Okay.
I-
I
you
appreciate
know,
it. Thank you.
and again, I feel your pain and I get it and we get it. It's just that it's something we have to do.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Kevin.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
We have one more question from the chat. What's the
Yes, sir.
ETA on getting on slides and being sent out? And also, will we send out a link to the recording?
Marcelino, do you have that answer?
Yes. So I think Casey can provide more information on the time frame for sending
Okay,
out the
Casey.
recording
Uh-huh.
and the slides, but we do it relatively quickly after the presentation. Casey?
Yes, we will provide both of those things.
Okay.
Probably this no later than the end of this week.
Okay. So there you go. Whoever had the hand raised.
Thank you.
So a couple of days. Yeah. Hope that was helpful.
One more question. Existing
Sure.
QR codes, are they going to be replaced? So existing QR codes are going to be replaced, correct? If so, is there a reason we cannot keep the existing QR codes and change where the codes point?
Yeah, so we've done some testing. So even if you did custom links, QR codes, for example, they still will have to be redone over in the ITS. So all the flyers, all the emails, all the shortcuts people have done to get to your project, unfortunately, they'll have to be changed. Um, Again, it's just because of the physical change of the servers, the QR codes and the survey links will have to be changed. And because they have to be changed, you'll have to report that to the IRB. The IRB is fully aware of this process. They're ready to go. And so as soon as you reach out, I'm sure there's not going to be a bottleneck with the IRB as well. It's just a matter of getting through this little stressful period. Any more, Alex?
That's all I see now.
So we have a couple notes from Jacob Stocks that Jacob, I'm trying to post them for everyone. But one of the concerns is a note for folks as they migrate: when survey data is exported from REDCap, the date timestamp variable does not import into ITS as it's not a real variable. Are there any workarounds for this from a REDCap admin perspective? Jacob has considered adding a new dummy variable to the ITS project with the same variable name to capture that data. And that, just as a note, might be helpful info for other folks as they are moving their existing data.
Fair point.
And the other note for folks as they migrate: be sure to reevaluate any ASIs as they will not be automatically queued up upon import of the XML file in ITS REDCap. Jacob, do you want to unmute and give any more information on that before we shift over? Let me see if I can allow to talk.
Sorry about that. I trying to figure out how to do so. Yeah, just a couple of notes. We've experienced a couple projects moving over for folks. When you have that survey data, so the instrument itself is a survey and not a form, and you export. If you're interested in capturing or maintaining the information around the date and time a given survey was completed, and you don't capture that elsewhere in some sort of variable in your project, and you're relying on that survey name underscore timestamp variable that you get in the export, you'll need to create some sort of placeholder variable in your new project, because when you go to upload that into ITS, it gives you an error message because it's not technically a real quote unquote variable that you've programmed into your project. It's just something that is captured kind of on the back end of REDCap and provided in the export. So if that's information you want to keep and want to use moving forward, you'll need to make sure that your import is accommodating that, like an ability to keep that information. And then the other note was just for automated survey invitations. So not your alerts and notifications, but the ones within the designer for the ASIs. They may show up like you can make them active and they have the green check and they look like they're good to go. But if you check your survey distribution tools, you'll see that those alerts prospectively are not queued up to be sent out unless you click the button in the designer to actually reevaluate those ASIs. At that point, it'll check the branching logic for any of your ASIs. And actually queue them up to be sent out for the respective records that they should be sent out for, queued up for. So just a couple notes as you're going through, when you're importing that XML file into ITS REDCap, it might all look good, but you definitely need to kind of dive deep into the function of the project itself and how you intended it to work or how it had been working in Med ITS to make sure it will do that moving forward.
Yes. Great points, Jacob. Appreciate that. If anybody has any follow-up questions that you want to ask of the REDCap team or Jacob, please do so even after this meeting if you wish, and send an email to redcap@fsu.edu. And we will direct any of your questions to Jacobs, who has done some case studying of this situation. Appreciate it, Jacob. All right. Well, if there's no others, Alex, I'm going to move on to Marcelina's presentation. You good?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, I want to introduce you to Marcelina Nogales, who is going to be presenting today about data management. A little bit about Marcelina. Marcelina has been with RCC since 2021, but she was a student at FSU in 2013 in scientific computing and digital humanities. Her research revolved around 3D modeling of art objects and artifacts. When not working, she likes to read, play cozy video games, and travel. Marceline is going to be covering discussion on how to improve the efficiency and reliability of your REDCap project, tips on helping you to manage your data for your own use, as well as facilitating data sharing, collaborating with other REDCap colleagues. More specifically, she's going to talk about naming conventions of surveys or forms, as well as variables within those surveys and forms. Talks a little bit about best practices, and touching on something that's kind of near and dear to my heart, and that is people have projects in production and then they come up with this aha idea or something they forgot to add to their project. And so she's going to talk a bit about how to test those new ideas and new things in a project that's already in production. Very important to test. And then also another one that's important is she's going to talk about backing up your data being metadata and your actual data. Anytime you start modifying your project, like you move it from production back to dev to make some changes and then move back to production, for example, you want to make those backups before you get into that, just so you have a copy of it and give you a peace of mind. With that, I'd like to everybody join me in welcoming Marcelina.
Thank you, Mark. Share screen. Okay. So thank you all for being here. This is I'm going to talk about some data management practices in REDCap. So what I'll cover today, in addition to the specific things that Mark mentioned, is what are we considering data in REDCap, different naming conventions, best practices for data management.
Marcelina, your screen's not shared.
Oh, okay.
Well, it is, but it's the other. It is, but it's the other. It's not your presentation.
Okay. In that case.
There we go.
Full screen? Perfect. Sorry about that. Back to the agenda, just a little bit more outside of the specific items mentioned by Mark. The difference between development and production for a particular project, things to keep in mind when testing a production project, and then backing up data. So when we think of data in REDCap, we're mostly thinking about record information and identifying information. Additionally, when we're talking data management, we should consider like survey, form names, data instruments, field names, which are going to be your variables, as well as field labels, as in what's being presented to the participants for those particular fields to help them fill it out better, and field types. So, for example, checkboxes or radio buttons, the text boxes in particular, you can enable validation for those. So for example, if you're pulling something like the ITS REDCap project ID number, you want to make sure that you're validating it as a number. You can also use validation to validate emails. Although it won't necessarily check if the email is a working email, but it'll check to make sure it has an @ sign. So things to consider when not only you're naming your variables, but also your instrument names. Make sure that you're naming your variables with helpful names as opposed to name 1 and name 2, which I know as you're copying fields, that can automatically populate. So making sure that those make sense when you are also exporting the data. A helpful hint that we are including is you can include the first 2 letters of the data instrument that that variable is in. As you go through spaces like the code book, they all kind of mesh together. And in ITS REDCap, when you're moving fields, you can move fields from any data instrument. So it helps to make sure that like I'm in the right data instrument and not losing the fields. The use of large negative numbers for like not applicable or other is helpful to make sure that when you're exporting your data, you can see at a glance, like, oh, these are just not, these are other options or prefer not to answer options. When you're looking at a data export and you're just listing them by number choice, the other could be option 5 in one field and then option 7 in another. So it's good to have them as consistent as possible. When you're naming your variables, they should be short, succinct, and also meaningful. 26 characters is the limit, so that your variable names are not truncated. But typically you'll go less than 26 characters unless you're being very specific about that variable name. I know that Mark had mentioned when you are making changes in production, those can be from aha moments or other changes that you might want to make. When you have established variable names and you have collected data, you should not change those variable names, as that leads to corrupt data later on. And for your surveys, forms, and data instruments, there is also that character limit criteria of 26 characters as well, but every data instrument has that complete field at the end of it, so know that that will be added to whatever variable name for the data instrument. So make sure that that's within the 26 character limit as well. For data collection, specifically for data instrument names, you can specify a different survey name that's visible to participants in the survey settings, as opposed to when you're in the project design space where there's also a title for the survey, and that's what will get exported out when you do a data export. So our best practices that we recommend is to make sure that when you are creating fields, that they're only containing small bits of information, not redundant, and one field per type of information. So for example, if you need different parts of the address, you should split those out into different fields and variables for the address space, the city, the state, and the zip code. What we found is that it's easier to kind of compile those together into a space if we need to pipe that information in any other fields, but it is very difficult to kind of parse it and separate that information if it's only located in one variable. The information and the data that you're pulling in REDCap will be the raw data. You can add calculation fields. However, like you can do the analysis for the data in REDCap outside. So you want to make sure that not only is the raw data backed up, but also what you're pulling in terms of metadata. When you are creating data, it's important to know if since you're doing analysis outside of REDCap, just kind of recording all of the steps used to process the data, so that your analysis can be reproducible and you're collecting data that's quantifiable as well as qualifiable. The recording all the steps, that can be documentation inside and outside of REDCap. Just make sure that you have it. Lastly, I think for this slide, it's recommended to have as much multiple choice options if possible versus free response, because then it'll be easier to quantify later on. And then of course, in addition to our documentation practices and our naming conventions, this is just a really funny comic that I think we bring up oftentimes, and this is a very common do as I say, not as I do for version control. So lastly, use the data quality rules once you have test data, and that's per project. But what it'll do is you can check on the blank values within your test data, and if there's anything that you can kind of add in terms of fields to avoid blank data where it shouldn't be blank, or what required fields are often left blank and such. So this is another way of testing a project when it's in development to make sure that it's that you can that it's working properly. So projects will start in development mode when they're first created. We have added text within our user request email that welcomes them to REDCap to not collect data when it's in development mode and only using test data. So why is that? We want to ensure that long-term accessibility, data protection, and compliance is supported within your REDCap project. When it's in production mode, it has built-in checks to make sure that you're not accidentally deleting data or removing fields that have data in them. When you are creating changes within like a draft mode while your project is in production, there is a summary of changes page that populates before you can not only send that you would like to commit these changes to your project, but also will send you a notification of the summary of changes when it gets sent to the REDCap admin team to make sure that you are aware that like you may have data loss or your variable, your options, your answer options have changed for a particular field. This is helpful for version control to make sure that you have a list of the approved revisions within the data dictionary, and tracking that instead of in development mode. There's nothing like that. You're just making the changes, and there's no list, and there's no like, are you sure pop-up that shows up. So when you're testing in production, for REDCap in particular, we recommend copying the project and then testing the changes in the copy while it's in development mode, and then entering the draft mode for the original project that's in production, making those changes, and then sending them up to be approved. The reason for that is for the REDCap side, there is no way to test those changes while it's in production. So it makes sense to create that copy in development, and that way you're also not copying real data into a development project. For the ITS REDCap, when you enter in draft mode in a production project, there is a new feature called draft preview mode, which allows you to view the current drafted changes as if it were live, which is essentially what you would be doing in development. But it allows you to also not make those changes before being able to test it. So another point for potentially moving over to ITS REDCap, so then you can start playing with those new features. So backing up data is important, and I think our recommendation is to do it on a monthly basis, just so that you have the assurance that if anything happens in terms of the monthly maintenance that we do in both ITS REDCap and REDCap, you have the data and a snapshot of what not only the data looks like and the metadata in case anything happens, to back it up on a monthly basis. We also recommend doing this before any big data imports that happen, or if there are any projects that you want to make big changes to, either in production or in development mode. And the way that you do that is the same way that you would do the ITS migration start, which is basically to back up the project and download the metadata and data as an XML. You can do this separately, where you would download the metadata only and then do a data export. And we also want this to prevent the 4 stages of data loss, which sometimes happens, at least has happened to me during grad school, in terms of data and or data loss. But we want to make sure that this doesn't happen to everyone, and we don't have to find an undo button for it, because most of the time there isn't an undo button. And yeah, so I did see a couple hands come up as I was presenting, but I think I'll take those questions now.
All right, I'll go ahead and allow the users to talk.
Sure.
All right, can you guys hear me?
Yes. Hi, Jared.
All righty, hello. So with the data backup, there's a couple of questions I have with that. With the migration to ITS, is ITS not going to do any backups?
No, they will. They'll definitely do backups, but the thing about a backup on a server or a cloud is you're backing up a lot of information, and not just REDCap projects. And so if you had to recover, right, it might take a little bit longer to recover than if you had your own backup of your project and your data, if that makes sense.
It does, but that also brings up what I think is the more important question.
Okay.
If the best practice in your guys' mind is for us to back up our own data, the reason we're using REDCap is so we don't do our own data collection, so it's HIPAA compliant. The data that we'd back up is not going to be HIPAA compliant, right? If it's de-identified, we could do that on our own. So what's the point of even using REDCap if we have to do this ourselves?
You don't have to, Jared. You don't have to back it up. It's just a suggestion. if you don't want to back it up, you don't have to back it up. Like I said, ITS, just like Med, backs up the servers, and they would have the data and the metadata in the backup. It would just take a longer time to recover it. I just like to back up anything and everything I do, whether it's a document in Word or if it's something in REDCap or if it's, my shopping list, for example, on my phone. I just back up everything, but there is no requirement. It was just a suggestion. Does that help at all?
A little bit. I mean, backing up data obviously is a good thing, but my biggest concern is with all of the data that we're backing up,
Yeah.
we'd essentially be doing the same thing if we collect data on our own
Yeah.
and just not use REDCap at all. So it
Right.
seems like it'd be saving a lot of time, effort, and steps just to not use REDCap.
Okay, but a backup only takes 10, 15 seconds. I don't know what a lot of time would be, but okay. I think that we're making a mountain out of a molehill personally on the backups. Personally, if you don't feel like it's valuable to do that, either don't back it up or use Qualtrics. I mean, I don't know what to tell you, sir. That's an interesting perspective, and I appreciate the suggestion. Anybody else that's on this meeting, if they concur, then your project is your project. We're just trying to help you provide ways that might help you.
Yeah, I think I understand that backing up the data in a separate space would also maybe require like modifications to IRB to make sure that you have that. But I think that like the making sure that you have backups of your data is not only just applicable to REDCap, but it's also just like a good programming method of making sure that you have extra places that the data exists.
All right, Alex, any others out there?
That's all I see at the moment.
Okay. All right, Marcelina, I'm going to jump right on in here. We'll do that one. And I'm going to do this one. All right, we had the questions from Marcelina's presentation. Just a few reminders of some links that we have out there. Again, Alex is going to put it in the chat. I will also send them out an email either this afternoon or tomorrow. It's your typical links to like the user request, technical support survey link, the migration inquiry survey link, as well as a few on the ITS side, ITS API request. And as I mentioned, if it's for an API key request on a project that was moved, you just want to put the yes in that question, and you won't get a full set of questions and have to upload other additional documents. There's also the ITS migration extension for those that are concerned about the complexities of your projects, rightly so. Then we've given you an opportunity to express your concern, and the leadership will make that decision. It's not us REDCap team really. All we're doing is facilitating to get you, our colleagues, to get your concern heard by leadership, and then leadership reaches back out to us or back to you, however the process is going to work. Also, there's a survey for moving ITS REDCap to production, which is this one. And the last but not least is a ITS migration Q&A document, which is a lot more detail-oriented than what I had just talked about in my little blurb today. Lastly, I just want to thank everybody for attending. We really do understand the concerns, and we're going to we're your advocate. We're trying to do our best to make sure that your concerns are heard by leadership, and leadership understands and helps us help you with your projects. Every project's in a different situation, and we just want everybody to, get through this the best way we can. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, August 27th, same time, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We do not have a presenter at the time at this moment. I'm soliciting anybody that'd be willing to present with us. I mean, heck, maybe even one of the migration challenges like Jacob talked about, or somebody maybe Mr. Fitzpatrick, if you wish to present on some challenges, maybe in a collegial way, we'd love to have you present. Anybody wishing to present, we'd appreciate it. We know it's a tough time, and I could talk about it all day long. It's not making things any easier for anybody that is in the middle of a project, a multi-year project. And like you've said, you got your QR codes out on flyers and every different, all these different complications. But we're not we're an advocate for you. We're not an adversary. Please don't look at us as an adversary. And hope that we see you again next month.
Hey, Mark, I have one more question from chat that I think I
Oh,
forgot.
good. Yeah, that's good.
So with the migration to ITS, can we create REDCap projects under a generic admin account rather than an individual's account? Like if the individual that created the project leaves, we need to reassign all projects permissions and access. I'm not
Well,
sure
it's
if this
not
was
good.
already answered, but
I'm not sure that I quite understand the question, but I can create projects and then add the people to it, and it's their project, right? Is that kind of sort of what we're talking about?
I th I think based on what the question says, um,
I don't know what
it's
generic is.
it's
That's a problem. I don't know what the generic term is.
it's sort of like if there was a lab account who's not tied to an individual user, it's just a account for the entire lab. Are they
Mhm.
allowed to create an account like that?
Well,
Are they
that's
allowed to create projects under an account like that, or does it have to be tied to individual
it has to be
users?
tied to an individual because they have to
Ah,
log in. The ITS login script, they have to have a FSU ID. If they, I mean, they can put in whoever put out the app, posted this question. You can always put it in technical support ticket. I mean, there's ways that we can look at things. I mean, for example, there are I don't want to call it sponsored accounts or mailboxes where notifications for alerts go out to not to a user but to an account that's monitored. As far as a lab, um, somebody in that lab, we'll just say the project manager in the REDCap project, he or she would have that account, and that they perhaps that's the account they could use. But then you got and I'm not telling anybody to do this because then you're going to be exposing yourself for passwords and things like that. Um, we would have to just kick this around if they want to post to support and survey. We could sit there and think about ways that we could come up with some idea, but there can't be some kind of generic account, unfortunately.
thanks.
Is that it, Alex? Marceline, you want to make any comments? Casey? Sydney? Simi?
That's it.
Okay. Well, again, thank you everybody for attending. I hope that it didn't create too much stress on you. We're having these meetings, and we may, as we get further down into the deadlines, we may start having them on a weekly basis just to help people get through this stressful period. Again, please don't look at the REDCap team, the REDCap admin team as an adversary. We're here to help you, to help your colleagues and help your participants. We're not here to create stress. We'll find ways to help you through it. Trust me, we will. Thank you all. Have a good afternoon.